Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I'm going to be trying these Artistro 48 watercolour set, and full disclosure, Artistro sent these to me for free, but all of these opinions are my own. So I'm just going to start by opening the box. They come in a really nice box, and these are £17.99 UK sterling pounds, and you get some paper as well as the watercolours. You get a nice little sample of paper, which is quite nice, and I'm going to be using this paper in the video, so I will let you know my thoughts on that. And then the watercolours come in this really nice tin, and Artistro I found are really nice with their packaging. I found that with the paint pens that I tried out. And yeah, you get the list of colours on the back, a nice design, and they come in a nice tin, and you also get a swatch sheet, which I find really useful, even though I don't really like swatching, but I will be swatching these in the video, don't worry. Get a nice swatch sheet. And then you also get a thing on top of the watercolours, like a piece of plastic with the names of the colours to label them, and they don't quite match with the swatch sheet, so when I was swatching I did have to double check the colours I was swatching with the names. But yeah, I really like this feature. I think it's a really nice cover, and this is me struggling to get it out of the tin, but there we go, we managed it in the end. Just a nice piece of plastic with all of the colours on, and it labels the colours, and the colour corresponds with the one underneath. There we go. And in this set you also get a sponge, an eraser, a brush, a pencil, and one of these water brushes. I don't use water brushes too much, but I will be using it at some point. But this is a really nice water brush, where the bit in the middle where you push out the water. I much prefer a normal paintbrush, but I think it's really cool that it's included in this set. And here is the brush that is included. I'll be using this quite a lot more in this video. Just struggling to put it back in the container. But I think it's really nice that you get all of these bits included. It isn't just the watercolours. For the price, I think it's really nicely packaged, and you get quite a lot. And these are the colours. There's a really nice range of colours. We have just the standard colours and some metallic and neon colours too. So yeah, first impressions of the packaging is that it's really nice. It is really fancy for the price. You don't normally get this much for the price. And now I'm going to swatch the colours. This might take me a little while, so obviously I'm not filming it all, but I'll film a little bit and you'll get the gist. And on the swatch sheet, it's kind of divided into 3 parts, so you can graduate the colour. So I'm just going to start with the first yellow. Well, the first yellow on the actual swatch sheet, it doesn't quite correspond with the colour in order of the packaging, so if you do get this, you just have to double check the colours, but it's not really too much of a hardship. It's quite nice to just sit and relax and do some swatching. Never thought I'd ever say that, but I did really enjoy swatching these watercolours. There was something quite nice and therapeutic about it. The fact that there was already a ready-made swatch sheet really helped, so it means I wasn't wasting some of my paper or some of the watercolour paper. I could do it straight onto the sheet, and it was really nice, and it felt like it completed the set. So yeah, my first impression of the colours is that these are really vibrant, they're quite pigmented, and they are really nice to work with, and I was really quite surprised at how pigmented they are, because sometimes watercolours on the cheaper end aren't quite as pigmented and they can be quite chalky, but these weren't chalky at all. They're really nice to work with and really nice and vibrant. So if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I'm not the biggest watercolour artist, and it's something that I do struggle with a little bit. I tend to be a little bit too quick with my watercolour and impatient, and that is something I really want to work on. And when I saw these Artistro paints, I thought I really wanted to try them because they look really nice and fancy. I don't know about you, but when I have a really fancy art supply, what to me feels really fancy, I really want to do well with it. So that's why I wanted to try these, and yeah, first impressions, I was really impressed. And here's me trying to swatch out the gradient, and this is the fluorescent orange, and the fluorescent colours were really nice and fluorescent, and the metallics were quite nice and metallic too. I was quite impressed. And yeah, you do need your sunglasses when looking at the fluorescent colours, which is always a good sign. So here is my finished swatch sheet. I think it's really nice considering it's a swatch sheet, and I did have quite a good time. I think I probably could have done the gradients a little better, but it is only a reference sheet, and I think this swatch sheet really does complete the pack of paints really nicely. And yeah, never thought I'd say this, but I enjoyed swatching those. So I'm going to use the watercolour paper just to do a couple of simple watercolour pieces, and for this one I'm just going to do some bubbles because I thought that would make use of all of the colours nicely. And I'm just using a roll of tape, and I'm using a rainbow pencil to draw around it because I don't like using graphite when it comes to watercolour, because I find it muddies it up a little bit, so I use the rainbow pencil. Now I'm just going to add some colour, and I think one of my problems with watercolour is that I don't tend to use a palette with it. I use the pans and just lift straight off the pans and into the paper, and I think maybe next time when I do some watercolour I will invest in a watercolour palette and will use that to lift the colour on and to mix with some water. But yeah, this was quite therapeutic to do. I enjoyed doing these bubbles, and I found that the colours were quite pigmented. It did muddy up a little bit, but that is more to do with my impatience in not letting the watercolour layers dry rather than the paints themselves. So I think I really do want to get better at watercolour. I've been saying this for quite a few years, and I think now that I have this paint set, I think I am going to really try hard to make a few videos on improving my watercolour skills. So do let me know in the comments below if that's something you want to see, whether you want to see like a learn watercolour with me or improve watercolour with me series. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. And if you're interested in trying these paints for yourself, there is a link in the description where you can get them. So for these bubbles, I just layered up some colours, went more transparent on the first layer and then added some more pigment, and I tried to make them a bit rainbowy just because that's how bubbles look. They're not the most realistic, but I thought it would be a fun opportunity to just play with the colours, and one of the bubbles does look a little bit muddy. I do fix that a little bit later, and how I fixed that was using the Artistro paint pen, the white pen. Probably is not always the best to use white over the top. It's much better, I think, to use masking fluid, so next time I do some watercolour I will play with masking fluid. And then I did the splatter effect around the bubbles just to make it look like there are lots of mini bubbles around the big bubbles, and I do quite enjoy doing this splatter effect. It's a bit messy, but sometimes you just got to do it, and I think the colours worked really well. So overall I was pleased with how this piece turned out. I do know that I need to be a bit more patient with letting watercolour dry, but that isn't the fault of the paints themselves, that's just my impatience, and I was really pleased with how vibrant these colours looked and how the two bigger bubbles looked especially. So here is my finished bubble piece. There we go, I think it looks really nice and vibrant. I particularly like how the colours blend together. And now I'm going to do Charlie because I'm much better with watercolour illustration than I am anything else. So I'm using the 2B pencil to sketch it out, but I will erase it later because I'm going to use my ink pen to line it. And there's Charlie with some balloons, and I'm using my Unipin liner just to outline it because these are waterproof. And I'm just outlining Charlie now and finishing off the balloon. I think I find watercolour illustration easier because it's a lot simpler to colour in. You colour in one wash at a time. There's not so much blending as it is if you're doing something realistic, etc. I do just find it that little bit easier. So I'm just doing Charlie's signature yellow top and his dungarees now. Trying to do minimal amounts of shading because I think in watercolour illustration the simpler the better. And I really did like this brush, it was really good for fine details. I was quite surprised. It had quite a nice fine point, so it was really good for the details. And colouring the balloons, I just did a simple wet on wet technique where I did the shading. And I'm just going to add some grass because I want it to look like Charlie is floating up with the balloons. He's just floating up from the grass. I think if I ever got a tattoo, this is the type of tattoo I would want. I'd want a little Charlie floating up my back with some balloons. I think that would be super cute. And I did add some of the metallic gold to Charlie's fur, and I also used the Artistro paint pen as well, just to add some highlights specifically to the balloons to make them shine. And this is a piece that I did off camera because I didn't think it was going too well, but I ended up liking it. So I used the water brush for this, and I added some of the metallic paint, and I just added some fish silhouettes, and I think this works really well. And I do really want to carry on using these watercolours and develop my skills, because I think this set is really good, especially if you're like me, you're not really confident with watercolours, and you don't want to spend a lot of money on a set, but they do feel really fancy and you do feel like you want to do a good job with them. And they are a really good starter set, and they are really good. They're easy to fit in your bag, they're travel size, and they do have some really nice colours, and the colours are really pigmented, and you also get brushes, pencil and eraser. So those are my first impressions of these Artistro watercolours. Don't forget, if you want to check these out for yourself, there is a link in the description. And yeah, let me know in the comments below whether you would like a watercolour series with these paints. And if you like this video, emotionally, do leave it a like down below, as that really does help me out. But that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.